General Hospital spoilers for Wednesday, June 4th tease that Michael takes the witness stand with a restrained confidence, but deep in his eyes is a mix of determination and tension. He knows that every word he's about to say won't just influence the legal outcome of the divorce trial, but could also shape the future of his children, Wiley and Amelia, in ways that can't be undone. The evidence he holds isn't just paperwork, it's living proof of the sacred bond between him and the children he's loved, cared for, and protected at all costs. Video clips show him staying up through the night to comfort Wiley during his first fever. Psychological assessments from family experts affirm the stable environment Michael has built. And even testimonies from preschool teachers describe how he's always on time for drop-offs, always present at parent meetings, all aiming for one goal: to prove he is the most deserving parent to have full custody of his children. But the moment Michael begins his opening statement, the air in the courtroom grows taut like a stretched wire. Rick, acting as the opposing attorney representing Willow, waits for every opportunity to expose weaknesses in Michael's testimony. Though Rick remains outwardly composed. His razor-sharp gaze dissects every word Michael utters, as if he's prepared with a series of questions ready to turn each explanation into a weapon against him. Every time Michael mentions dedication, stability, or the children's best interests, Rick nods subtly, like he's laying bricks in the wall of his rebuttal. His silence heightens the pressure even more than an argument, because it signals a storm brewing just below the surface. And it's not just Rick. Diane, representing Michael, feels the intensity closing in on her client. She's constantly taking notes, adjusting her strategy in real time in case Michael's words inadvertently reveal something unfavorable. But Michael, under immense pressure, continues with astonishing composure. He speaks of the long nights when Willow was away, leaving him to care for Amelia alone while she pursued her charity projects. He shares how he learned to cook for toddlers, how he proactively sought out pediatricians to better understand Willow's postpartum emotional struggles, hoping to empathize and support her. These aren't just touching anecdotes, they are living demonstrations of Michael's love and fatherly responsibility. However, an unexpected twist shakes the room when Rick requests to play a video of Michael and Willow arguing in the Quartermain playroom, a video that had been previously suppressed and only just entered into evidence at the last minute. In the footage, Michael raises his voice at Willow, suggesting she's unfit to parent alone, saying, "If you don't wake up, you're going to lose both of these children forever." That sentence echoes through the courtroom like a gut punch, threatening to unravel the image of the ideal father Michael has been trying so hard to present. Jurors glance at him with uncertainty, while Willow breaks into tears, her emotional vulnerability casting a haunting shadow over the scene. Diane quickly moves to pause the video, arguing against its completeness, but the damage is done. Michael now looks like a man capable of using threats as leverage. Despite his efforts to clarify that the clip was taken out of context, that he was trying to hold the family together, the shift in courtroom mood is palpable. Carly, sitting behind him, clutches her hands until her knuckles turn white. Jason lowers his head silently, sensing that things are spiraling fast. And Rick isn't done. He delivers a final blow, raising the question of whether Michael had known about the relationship between Drew and Sasha beforehand. And whether he deliberately withheld that knowledge to benefit from both sides, especially now that Sasha is pregnant. This moment nearly breaks Michael. He turns to Diane, just as surprised by the allegation, and then to Willow, who no longer hides the distrust in her eyes. Michael realizes now, this battle isn't just about custody. It's about preserving his character, upholding the truth, and salvaging whatever remains of a family once built on love. He can't turn back. He can't stop. And just then, as his eyes catch sight of Wiley sitting outside with the nanny, Michael knows, despite everything, he'll keep fighting to his last breath, to be with the people he loves most. But he also understands. In a courtroom where law and emotion intertwine, sometimes the truth alone is not enough to win. The confrontation between Brooklyn and Lulu unfolds in a room heavy with years of pent-up emotions, now erupting like a violent storm. No longer just a personal feud. Their clash reveals a chain of calculated decisions, hidden mistakes, and the consequences of choices rooted in fear of loss. The true identity of Gio, a secret guarded for years, has now come to light, triggering a cascade of reactions no one can contain. Brooke Lynn has carried that burden since she was a young girl. Forced to choose between keeping her child or giving him up to protect his future. Under pressure from her family, especially Lois. She had to bury the truth and construct a carefully crafted narrative to secure her son's safety. But the cost was steep, a distorted reality, and a mother-child bond founded on deception. Lulu, cut from Joe's life in the cruelest way, returns to a heartbreaking truth. A part of her soul, a child she never even knew existed, has grown up in the shadow of time and decisions made by others. The family meeting room is no longer a place for negotiation or reason. It has become a battleground between two women who both carry the title of mother, but reached it by very different paths. In this emotional struggle, Brooke Lynn clings to the one thing that connects her to Gio: sacrifice. She believes she did what was right, that without her, Gio wouldn't have grown up in a safe, stable environment. But now, that belief feels fragile as she faces the harsh truth that Lulu was robbed of her legal and emotional right to motherhood. This revelation doesn't just impact Brooke Lynn and Lulu, it shakes the entire Quartermaine family. Tracy senses the gravity of the situation. One wrong move, and this will escalate beyond a private feud into a media scandal, a moral disaster that could tarnish the family's legacy. Ned is caught in the middle, unable to take sides, knowing both women have their reasons. Chase, with a deep connection to Brooke Lynn, sees the risk of her spiraling into self-destruction if she keeps clinging to a truth that should have been shared long ago. Gio is the core of this storm. He didn't ask for this. He didn't expect it. But he's now both the beginning and the end of every unresolved question. He carries not only the genetic legacy of two women but also the emotional aftermath of a youth spent under invisible surveillance, never knowing that the most valuable truth had been hidden by the people who loved him most. Hearing the tension behind the closed door, Gio senses not just the pain of the mother he's always known, but also the sorrow of the mother who never had the chance to exist in his memories. All definitions of family, love, and sacrifice are now up for reevaluation. There are no winners in this battle, because both sides have lost pieces of themselves in the long struggle to keep or reclaim the truth. Brooke Lynn, bearing scars and shattered trust, must now face the consequences of her past decisions. Lulu, with her grief reawakened and her fury over having the sacred stolen from her, must learn to forgive, to build a bond that never had a beginning. This confrontation doesn't end with a clean resolution. It opens a new chapter, one where everyone must learn to live with the truth, to heal the fragments of buried memories, and to rebuild something resembling a family, with all its complexities, contradictions, and unfinished love. And as the sun sets over Genoa City, the shadows in the hearts of Brooke Lynn, Lulu, and Gio remain, but at least, for the first time, they've stopped running from them. Anna felt herself being pulled deeper into a vortex she couldn't escape, a maelstrom where unresolved past and a fractured present collided. Each passing day brought a tighter grip of dread. A shadow she couldn't shake, the feeling that something terrible was about to happen to Emma. And at the center of this growing unease, of every unspoken threat, every unexplained behavior, stood Brennan. Not because he had acted directly, but because Anna knew men like him too well, the kind who leave no trace until it's far too late. Sharing her suspicions with Jason wasn't just instinct, it was a calculated move. In a world where betrayal could come from anyone, Jason was one of the few she could still trust. He wasn't entangled in WSB's internal politics like the other agents, nor was he swayed by power or prestige. Jason followed his instincts, and more importantly, he understood the urgency beneath the calm facade Port Charles tried to maintain. When Anna met him for a discreet conversation after hours at a rarely visited bar, she didn't need to say much. A look, a name, the strain in her voice, these were enough for Jason to know this wasn't just another case. This was a mother's war to protect her child. Anna told him about the signs she'd been tracking for weeks, Brennan avoiding questions about his recent activities, strangely altered internal memos, and most of all, the unsettling coincidence between his arrival and the threats surrounding Emma. Jason didn't ask many questions. He simply nodded and stood up, knowing that from that moment on, he was locked into a battle with no retreat. For Anna, his support wasn't just a choice, it was a fragile lifeline in a war growing darker by the day. At the same time, Brennan was beginning to feel the tightening grip around him. The political connections that had once propped him up were starting to fade. Old allies were keeping their distance. And then there was Anna, not as a comrade, but as an avenger, fortified by the fierce resolve of a woman who had nothing left to lose except her daughter. Brennan knew he couldn't face her head-on. So he chose the more dangerous route, illusion of control. He continued to act as though everything was under his command, maintained a composed exterior, but inside, he was scrambling to conceal his vulnerabilities, to bury the dark plans that could undo everything Anna was working to protect. Anna, meanwhile, wasted no time. With Jason, she began tracing financial anomalies, shell accounts linked to the organization Brennan once worked for. They uncovered layers of disguised spending, secret international travel, and a list of individuals eliminated after collaborating with Brennan. It wasn't enough to charge him, but it painted a picture. Brennan was planning his endgame, possibly a direct attack, or worse, a trap Emma couldn't escape from. Jason wasn't the only one watching. Dante, Jordan, even Robert began circling Brennan. Secret meetings, reopened files, and the whisper of an underground war grew louder in the halls of the WSB. Anna knew time was running out. She had to force Brennan into a corner. And the only way to do that was to find undeniable proof, a slip-up, a trace, or a traitor in his ranks. In the final days of the investigation, Anna barely slept. She lived off adrenaline and fear, the fear that if she faltered for even a second, Emma would pay the price. And then, when Brennan began ordering asset withdrawals, destroying data, and preparing to leave town under the guise of a routine trip, Anna knew it was time. She and Jason planned to strike at Brennan's final weak point, a secret contact. Once a crucial link in the organization, now in hiding for fear of retribution. If they could convince this person to testify, they'd have a living witness, a knockout blow to expose Brennan. And so, this wasn't just an investigation. It was a symphony of old wounds, unconditional love, and unwavering courage. Anna wasn't just protecting Emma. She was fighting for a world where justice wasn't a promise, but an act. And Jason, the friend, the silent ally, stood firm, a shield as the storm began to rise. The reunion between Lucky and Liz wasn't just a surprise encounter between former lovers, it was a collision of past and present, of broken hopes and unspoken possibilities. In the heavy silence that filled the room, everything seemed to slow down, as if even time held its breath before all that was left unsaid. Lucky entered the room changed, not the romantic idealist who once believed in love and justice, but a man marked by pain, hardened by reality, and burdened with regrets. He hadn't returned to reclaim what was lost, but to face it, understand it, and perhaps, seek forgiveness. Liz saw it instantly. In his eyes, his gestures, she felt the sorrow and remorse Lucky carried from walking away from her and the children. There was no pride left in him, no defiance, just raw honesty. But for Liz, every return came with consequences. She was no longer the fragile woman who once hoped Lucky would rescue her. She had learned to survive without him, rebuilt her life from the ruins. One step at a time, until everything appeared stable, at least on the surface. So Lucky's return was a quake. It shook the foundation of everything she had worked to steady. It forced her to confront emotions she thought had long faded. The questions haunted her: should she give him another chance? Should the kids be allowed to see the father they once adored? And most importantly, could she trust again, especially the man who once broke her heart? Lucky didn't expect forgiveness or a second chance, as if nothing had happened. He only wanted Liz to understand, there were reasons for his departure, though even he wasn't sure they were right. What mattered now was that he was ready to take responsibility. Not to atone, but because he finally realized that family was irreplaceable. He had traveled far, done what once felt noble, but inside him remained a void nothing else could fill. Liz and the children. He came back knowing what he wanted, but afraid it might be too late to fix anything. Their conversation wasn't filled with poetic promises or dramatic declarations. It was one of the most genuine moments they'd ever shared. Lucky made it clear, he wanted to be part of the children's lives, to make up for the lost time. He wasn't arrogant about it. He was careful, attentive, and willing to accept even painful truths, like how Liz had learned to live without him, and how broken trust isn't easily repaired. But in those quiet moments, there was a flicker of light, when Liz mentioned Jake in a gentler tone, when her eyes lingered just a moment longer on Lucky. When she didn't stop him from saying he wanted to take Aiden to the park that weekend. Those small gestures hinted at something. Perhaps there was still space in Liz's heart for Lucky. Not as a lover. Maybe, but as the father of her children, a part of their past and possibly their future. Still, between hope and healing lay many hurdles. Liz's current relationships, unresolved pain. And the changes in Lucky after all these years, these were not small matters. They both knew if they were to write a new chapter, it couldn't be based on feelings alone. They would need honest dialogue, patience, and above all, trust. The very thing they once lost but never stopped longing to rebuild. And so, on that quiet afternoon in Port Charles, with sunlight casting golden shadows on memories long buried, their meeting became a turning point, not an end, not a beginning, but a crossroad. A crossroad that could lead to reunion or final parting, but unmistakably, a moment they would never forget. A new chapter was beginning, filled with unanswered questions, but one truth made clear. Love, forgotten or buried, always finds a way back. In recent days in Port Charles, as the undercurrents quietly rise beneath the seemingly calm surface, Laura and Sonny's meeting has become a pivotal turning point in a chain of events that is about to ignite the biggest storm in the Corinthos family. No longer the usual exchange of pleasantries between a city leader and a symbol of power who has ruled both worlds, legal and illegal, this conversation carries a terrifying depth of truth, anxiety, and most of all, warning. Laura, as the mayor of Port Charles and a mother who has lost her child to dark conspiracies, enters the meeting with Sonny with not only files and reports, but also the haunting thought of what is secretly happening behind their backs. She had seen the signs of trouble that could not be ignored, the strange behavior of Rick, the secret meetings between Rick and Ava, and the sudden change in Christina's behavior, who was increasingly withdrawing from her family and seeking out new friends, with a hidden sense of hostility. Laura opened with a clear warning: "You are surrounded, Sonny. Not by your open enemies, but by people you thought you knew." It was not just a personal assessment, but the conclusion of a series of observations, documents, and suggestive whispers she had gathered from council meetings, from Alexis's confidences, and from Port Charles residents who sensed a strange aura in the city. Sonny, always alert and rarely vulnerable, was forced to listen. He knows that if Laura speaks up, it means things have gone beyond mere gossip. It is a truth that has been hidden, but is slowly coming out in the most dangerous way. Laura makes it clear that Rick is no longer acting alone. Ava, with her own history of betrayal, is now the most dangerous catalyst for his plans. No one knows what their deal is, but Ava's sudden change in attitude towards Christina, approaching her with flowery words and hints of liberation, is deeply worrying. Laura believes that Ava and Rick are using Christina as a central card to divide the Corinthos family from within, to discredit Sonny both legally and morally, and from there make bolder moves in the upcoming trials. Sonny, already exhausted by the internal conflicts between Michael and Willow, Nina's hidden betrayal, and Jason's recent doubts about his loyalty, now faces the prospect of losing Christina, the girl he thought was strong enough to stay out of family machinations. He doesn't want to believe that Ava, who has worked with him so many times for the common good, has betrayed him again. But it's Laura's eyes, so determined, so suspicious, so fearful, that Sonny must accept, his family is once again at the center of a plan for total destruction. Laura doesn't come with a warning, she comes with a plan. She asks Sonny to extend his influence not through violence or financial power, but through strategic intervention, approaching Christina not as a domineering father, but as a man willing to stoop to listen. She suggested that Sonny bring Jason, who had been a big influence with Christina, into the mix to figure out what Rick and Ava were really after. At the same time, Laura hinted that Alexis might hold a key, but that she was being silenced by something Rick held. Sonny knew that this was no longer about him alone. Once Rick dared to use his daughter as a tool to achieve his goals, there was no going back. And once Ava stepped out of the neutral zone, any rules that had existed between them no longer held true. The encounter with Laura ended not with a handshake or a friendly goodbye, but with a long silence, an unspoken promise that, when the real battle began, they would not back down. Laura walked out of the room, her eyes determined, and Sonny stood there, staring at the phone, knowing that it was time to call Jason, not to give orders, but to ask for help. For when a family is threatened by those closest to them, trust is the last weapon they can rely on. And this battle will not be about defending Corinthos' name, it will be about saving the hearts of his children, before they are swept away by the whirlwind that their enemies have ignited long ago.